All right, so this morning I'm going to, you are going to have to forgive me, but I'm going to be flogging a dead horse. All right, I'm going to be looking at something that we have been looking at over and over and over again. And
Too much people.
it's something that I'm sure you are all just as fascinated about as I am. You know, I have a pretty good understanding of the Trinity doctrine. I have a pretty good understanding of righteousness by faith. I have a pretty good understanding of the two Adams and all of these topics. But nothing stirs me and moves me and fills me with wonder and amazement as the topic of who God is. I find myself wanting to know more and more about the kind of person that he is. And I find that I am so blown away each time. Each time I see something new. And in fact, that's the topic we are going to be studying for eternity, right? So nothing is wrong if we start to beat that quote unquote dead horse from now. So I want to touch a bit on that this morning. And the title of my presentation is Absolute Power. Absolute Power. A few weeks ago, I was driving along the highway with my family. You know, we were minding our own business. I was driving very carefully. And all of a sudden, at about 1,000 miles per hour, of course, I'm exaggerating, but about 1,000 miles per hour, a vehicle came around the corner, hurtling towards us. And apparently, what the guy did, as soon as he rounded the corner, he pulled up his handbrake. So the car started spinning in the middle of the highway and it was coming towards us side on. So I realized in that split second that there was nothing he could do to stop the vehicle. And you know, they say when somebody says your life flashed before your eyes, I could feel the impact. And there was nothing I could do. I was a sitting duck and my family was in the car. So miraculously, the car missed us by a whisker. I mean, literally a whisker, right? And suffice it to say, I was shocked, terrified, but I was also furious because instead of slowing down to apologize, all this man did was straighten the car and drove off, all unconcerned that he had just endangered the lives of, I think it was four of us in the car. He had just endangered the lives of four people just to show off, right? He was showboating and carrying on, which is why he was driving like that. And you know, I'm gonna be honest with you. The thought came to my mind. I was furious. The thought came to my mind. If I had power, I would have taught him a lesson today. That's the thought that came to my mind. If I had power, I would have taught him a lesson. I thought to myself, why didn't God give us the ability to move things with our minds, for example? Because maybe I would have caused its four tires to be blown out, or I would have caused this car to levitate and turn upside down, or something. That's how I felt in that moment. Right? And of course, it wasn't the right way to feel, but it was the human reaction. The truth of the matter is, God, in His wisdom, has withheld certain kinds of power from humanity. Right? He has withheld certain kinds of power. And it's a good thing I didn't have power that day. I've heard this saying many times that it's a good thing God is not like man. It's a good thing I didn't have power that day because I probably would have done something that would not have been Christian like. But there's a saying that we all know: absolute power corrupts absolutely. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. I have discovered that this is true not only on earth, but it is a universal truth, right? What this is saying is that when a person has power, he is incapable of using that power in a way that is not beneficial to himself. He is incapable of using that power in a way that is not corrupt, in a way that is not self-gratifying. And as I said just now, I have discovered that that is a universal truth, right? If you look at the way men have used power throughout history, the Egyptians were probably the first world power. What did the Egyptians do with their power? They enslaved the people of God, right? They didn't use it to help humanity or help mankind. They used it to conquer others and subjugate them and bring them under their dominion to serve themselves. They had the children of God as slaves for 400 years, right? Same thing with the Babylonians. The Babylonians conquered the then known world and enslaved all the people that they defeated. And in fact, Nebuchadnezzar used his power to force all the citizens of Babylon to worship an image, right? A clear abuse of power, a clear abuse of democratic rights. The Greeks did the same thing. When the young King Alexander became ruler of Greece at the age of 25, I think it was, immediately upon tasting power, he set out to conquer the entire world, right? Leaving death and bloodshed in his wake. And even today, he is famous because what is he famous for? For helping the world, for developing medicine, for developing technology? No, for killing people. He conquered the world in 5 years, and he was so bloodthirsty and power hungry that when he had defeated the entire world after 5 years, and he realized that there was nowhere left to conquer, history tells us that he wept bitterly because he had no more conquest left. So this is how he used his power. The Greeks the same. The Persians, sorry. Darius passed a law that no other god should be worshipped for 30 days but him. So every nation, you can follow the history coming down, coming into power and using that power to benefit themselves, abusing that power. The Romans were probably the worst. If you look at the history of the Caesars, it's a sordid record of treachery, deceit, cruelty, murder, betrayal coming right down the line, right? They received power and they used it brutally and mercilessly. I read of this emperor in Asia. He set out to conquer Asia, and when he came to the city of Delhi in India, and he had wiped out women, children, dogs, everything. What he did, he cut off the heads of all the citizens, thousands of them, and erected them on poles. And then the young men in the city, he used them to build a human wall, right? He joined them together using bricks and mortar while they were alive. He used them to build a huge wall. And they stayed in that wall until they died. So, absolute cruelty. And this is what power has done to men from the dawn of time through history coming down. Today, it's no different. It just manifests itself in a different form. All of us, if I ask anybody on this platform this morning to name one politician who does not use power corruptly, does not rule in a way that benefits himself and his party, I would probably be giving you an impossible task, right? In fact, we have all come to associate the word politics with such trickery and deceit that instead of politics, we say politricks, right? Obama was in power, there was corruption. Trump came into power, there was corruption. Biden is in power, there's still corruption. And for the next 100 presidents to come, there will still be corruption. Because men are incapable, they have proven this, men are incapable of wielding power without corrupting it. Even the kings in the Bible who were, there are some kings who the Bible speaks of them and it says they turned away from the Lord. And then there were some others who it says walked in the way of the Lord. Even those kings. For example, David, a man who was described as being after God's own heart. And he was a good king. He was a good man. But even David used his power corruptly. In order to win Bathsheba, he instructed Joab to place Uriah at the forefront of the attack so that he would be killed, right? He used his power to manipulate situations so as to cost Uriah his life. Even David, Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, he used his power to lead Israel into idolatry. He was the reason why Israel was eventually split into two factions. So what I'm saying is that no human being since the dawn of time, even those men who were men of God, have been able to wield power without corruption. None. At some point, they have used it to benefit themselves, their families, in modern times, their political parties. And this is how men use power. And so I ask myself, what about angels? What if an angel were to be given power? Would he be any different? And, the answer is clear. There is an angel who was given power, right? In fact, from the time that he was in heaven, he was powerful. He was next in command to Christ from what we understand, right? But power is what Satan wanted. In Isaiah 14, verses 14 and 15, I will read. It says, speaking of Lucifer, for thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. What Satan wanted from in heaven was power. And he got that power, right? His claim, as we know, was that if he is given that power, he can do a better job than God can. And so Satan was given power. The brightest cherub who stood before the throne of God. Satan's power manifested himself. In fact, Paul tells us in Ephesians 2, verse 2, wherein in times past ye walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air. So Satan is referred to as the prince of the power of the air, right? He has power over the elements of the air. And we see examples of that in the Bible. When Job's servants came to him one day, when Satan was given authority to afflict Job, in one day, the servants came to Job and they said, listen, a fire came down from heaven and consumed all of your cattle and all of your servants. While he was speaking, another one came in and said, a great wind came and destroyed the room that your children were in. Where did the fire come from? Where did the wind come from? It wasn't God who sent them. So Satan had power. When Moses cast his rod on the floor and it became a serpent, the sorcerers of Satan were able to replicate that feat. Moses struck the Nile and it became blood. The sorcerers of Satan were able to repeat that feat. And they were able to replicate the frogs as well. When it got to the lice, the Bible says they were not able to do that, right? I guess he had reached the limit of his power then. But the point I'm making is that Satan, the angel of light from before the throne of God itself, he came down to earth with power. So is an angel able to wield power without being corrupted by it? Well, according to 1 Peter 5 and verse 8, it tells us what Satan uses his power to do. It says, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. So what does Satan do with the power that he has? Is he, a former angel of light, able to wield power without being corrupted, without using it for his own benefit and manipulating it? Absolutely not. The minute he left the throne of God, that power started to manifest itself and the truth started to show. And Peter says, what Satan does with his power is to roam about seeking whom he can destroy. The purpose of his power, the way he uses his power is to destroy. The same way his servants have always used it, for destruction and conquest and chaos and death. And I'm submitting to you that any angel that leaves the throne of God now and is given power, that angel will do the same thing that Lucifer did and continues to do. That power would corrupt that angel just the same, without the Spirit of God in him. So absolute power corrupts absolutely. It is a universal truth. No creature from the dawn of time has proven that he is able to handle power. So I come to the mightiest being, the most powerful being that exists in the universe, the Almighty. We all know of God's power. You know, you think about a person who he speaks and matter materializes from nothingness. How is that possible? You look at the trees, the birds, the animals around you. They are capable of thinking and feeling and being smart and using their brains and functioning in a systematic, sensible way. And you realize that these things came about when a person spoke. You know, he's a being who is beyond comprehension. The power of this person is something that we cannot grasp in our minds. He's all powerful. All creatures are inhibited by time, space, and in the case of humans, we are inhibited by matter, right? We live in time. We operate by days, weeks, months, years, and our lives will come to an end. We are bound by space. I am sitting in this chair now. I cannot be sitting somewhere else at the same time. And matter, we are bound by matter. I cannot walk through walls. I cannot walk through doors. But we're talking about a being who lives and exists outside of time, space, and matter. The past, the present, and the future are all the same to God, right? In fact, he is the only being. In Isaiah 46, verse 10, he says, speaking of himself, he says, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times, the things that are not yet done. There is only one being in the universe who can do this. He can tell you what is going to happen 6,000 years in the future or 6,000 years in the past. He does not live in time like the rest of us do. He's above and transcends time. He transcends space. Jeremiah 23 verse 24 says, "Can any hide himself in secret places that I shall not see him, said the Lord? Do I not fill heaven and earth?" He is not bound or limited by space like his creatures are. So what I'm saying is, this is a being whose power exceeds and supersedes the comprehension of humans. I heard somebody ask one time, where did God come from? When did God come about? When did he begin? And I like the answer that was given. The answer was, God has no beginning because he does not exist in time. We have beginnings. He does not. He supersedes the realm of time and the realm of space. So he's beyond our understanding. So this being has absolute power. And there are some who are teaching today, right? There are some who are teaching that God uses and has used that power corruptly, right? And if you look at the New Testament and you do not understand certain things, then it is understandable that some might draw that conclusion. In the Old Testament, when Uzzah touched the ark, it was the power of God that struck him dead, right? This being who has absolute power. When two bands of 50 men came to Elijah and they disrespected him, it was the fire of God that consumed them. Same thing with the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel, right? It was the same God who instructed the Israelites on certain occasions to wipe out entire nations, including women, children, even the dogs. And some look at this and they surmise that even the God of heaven, who possesses absolute power, has used that power corruptly. But you know, we, the children of God, understand. We understand something. And this understanding has completely opened my mind and my eyes and helped me to see things that I've never seen before. And what is that understanding? It is the understanding that if I want to know the truth about what God is really like, if I want to know who he really is, if I want to know how he really uses his power, I have to look at Jesus, the only begotten of the Father, the express image of the Father, the living manifestation of the Father. And that is where I must go to find the truth, the reality. And so I want to spend a few minutes looking at the power of God. How does God use his power? And I want to look at it the only way that it is real, it is right to look at it, which is through the life of Jesus. How did Jesus use his power? We have seen how men have always used power. We have seen how an angel from the throne of God itself would use power and has used power. Let us see how Jesus used his power. Now we are told that the first miracle that Jesus performed was in Cana at a wedding feast, right? This account is found in the Gospel of John, and I'm just going to read a couple of verses here. All right, so Jesus is at the wedding, and his mother comes to him, and she informs him that the wine has run out. And when they wanted wine, the mother of Jesus said unto him, they have no wine. Look at Jesus' response now. Mary comes to him and she tells him what the problem is. They have no wine. Look at what Jesus says. Jesus said unto her, woman, what have I to do with thee? Mine hour is not yet come. Now, the way Jesus is speaking here, it's not that he's being disrespectful to his mother, right? That is how they refer to females in those days as woman. In fact, it was considered a respectful way to address a woman. What Jesus is saying to his mother here is, basically, I'm paraphrasing, why are you bringing this problem to me? This is not my problem. It is not time for me to do anything now. That is what he says to her. Now, it is interesting to me to think, why does Mary go to Jesus to ask him this? Because if the water turning into wine was his first miracle, what did Mary know that made her believe that Jesus could do something about the situation? She must have known something. She probably had seen things before that made her know, my son can do something about this, right? Whether it was a miracle or miracles he had done before that she maybe had witnessed, I don't know, right? But it's just something interesting I was thinking about. But what is even more interesting is what transpires next. Jesus says to his mother, this is not my problem. I want nothing to do with this situation. But look what Mary does. Does she go and sit and forget about the issue? She goes to the servants and she says, do whatever he tells you to do. Why does Mary do that? Because he has just said to her, this is not my problem. Mary knows that the words of her son, the words of God himself, are superseded by something else. I heard my father say this a few times, and I'm beginning to realize that it is true. The words of God, which are mighty, which are irrefutable, which have the power to cause nothing, matter to materialize from nothingness. Those words are superseded by something that is even greater. And it is his character. It is who he is. And Mary realized this. Jesus says, I am not interested in this problem, but she realizes that who he is in his heart, he cannot ignore that problem. And so she goes to the servants and she's saying, listen, don't worry about what he says. I know him. His heart will not allow him to not deal with this problem. Do whatever he says. Who God is supersedes even his very words. His mouth said no, but look what his heart did. And in addition to that, I asked myself the question, why did Jesus bother? You go to a wedding feast. I mean, when he cast out demons, he was conquering the kingdom of Satan. When he healed the sick, he was freeing the afflicted. What does turning water to wine have to do with the work of God? What salvific importance is there in that? How does that help the work of God? You know why he did it? Because he wanted the people at the wedding to be happy, right? He did it to make them happy. So this gives me a critical clue into how God uses his power, right? God is not a rigid, rule-keeping person who sticks within what we understand, he will use his power to make his children happy. This is what Jesus did. And his mother knew that this is the kind of person he was. That is why she went to him. You know, I'm going to share an experience that I had with my father recently. I know he won't mind if I share it, right? Because it illustrates what I'm saying. A few weeks ago, he was doing a transaction online. And the transaction that he was doing had to do with the global financial market, right? And the financial market was moving a certain way, and that would have caused him to lose a significant sum of money. You know, he called me that morning and he sounded a little discouraged. He's always the person who encourages and motivates me and advises me. I'm happy to boast that on this occasion, I was the adult. He said to me, Dan, it doesn't look good. The market is going the wrong way, and I know the Lord's grace is sufficient. I said, Daddy, ask the Lord to change it. You know, he said to me, that's probably not realistic. You know, God, it's probably not reasonable for me to expect God to move the entire global market just for my sake. What God will do, his grace is sufficient to get me through the situation, but I can't expect him to change the entire market for my benefit. I said, Daddy, there are many occasions I have gone against your advice and I have messed up. And on every occasion, because you're a good father, you have run to my rescue, regardless of how much I messed up. I said, God is greater than us. Go and ask him to do this thing and see what happens. You know, and he thought about it. He said, I'm going to pray. Less than 10 minutes later, he called me back, and you know, the excitement of a child. He said, Dan, something amazing just happened. He said, I went on my knees after I talked to you, and I asked our daddy. I said, if it is your will, please let this thing go back to where it's coming from. He said, I had hardly finished praying when the entire global financial market turned around and went back exactly to where I asked the Lord to send it. He said, what a father we serve. He will use his power. You mean to say that he manipulated the entire global financial market just for me? He will use his power like that for me? Just because I'm his child? Just because he wants to see me happy? This is how God uses power. This is how he uses power. And it was the same thing with Jesus at the wedding. He just wanted to make his children happy. Not because there was any benefit in it for him. Jesus is not a person who shows off. There was nothing in it to gain from him. But he would do it because he wants his children to be happy. That is how he uses power. And it's something he has done right throughout history. Right? Isaiah went to Hezekiah. He said, Hezekiah, get your house in order. You're going to die. And he leaves. Hezekiah turns his face to the wall and he starts crying like a baby, talking to his daddy. And before Isaiah leaves, before Isaiah reaches the entrance of the court, God says to Isaiah, turn back and go and tell him, I have seen your tears. I will add 15 years to your life. But on top of that, I will cause the sundial to turn backwards 15 degrees. But for those of us who understand what that means, right? In order for that to happen, the earth is rotating in one direction. The earth will have to stop, rotate backwards in order for God to give Hezekiah the sign that he has added 15 years to his life. So God stops the world, defies all the laws of nature and physics, and turns it backwards 15 degrees to comfort his crying child. Just to comfort him and to say to him, I care about you. I want to make you happy. That is how God uses his power. And you know, I'm happy God is not like men. I'm happy God is not like men. That is how God uses his power. And Mary apparently knew that the word of God is superseded by who he is. Here's another example that I love. In Matthew 15, verses 22 to 28, I will read it. It says, and behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coasts, and cried unto him, saying, have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with a devil. Now, as we know, Canaanites did not get along well with Jews. So this woman is a stranger and a foreigner. She is not a part of Jesus' group. She is not a member of his political party, right? And the politicians today, they only do things for you when you are for them. That is how leadership and power is used on this earth. If you are for them, they are for you. And so this woman comes out and she's crying out to Jesus. Verse 23 says, but he answered her not a word. What a disgrace. You know, I'm calling out to somebody asking them for help, and the person is ignoring me completely. My pride and my self-respect would have said to me in that moment, leave him alone. I'm not asking him anything else. If that is how he responds and reacts to me, I want nothing from this person. In addition to that, the disciples, they come to him and they say, send her away. She's embarrassing us. She's causing a scene. She's making us look bad. Right? This is how men use power. She's causing us to look bad, and we don't want that kind of negative publicity. So they are asking Jesus to send her away. So Jesus humiliates her by not answering. But he follows it up with even more insult. Verse 24, but he answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So at the beginning, he refuses to answer her. And now when he finally speaks, what comes out of his mouth is an insult, right? He's saying, I am not here to help you. You people are lost. You people are infidels. I'm not here for you people. I am here for my people. And again, if that was me, I would be out of there, right? So the word of God again says to her, I will not help you. That is what his word says. And when I'm reading this, I'm thinking this is a really unusual woman. Because after two humiliating, defeating statements, she comes again, the Bible says, she came and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. Now, Jesus pushes her to the limit. He tests her to the utmost. The third time, he answered and said, it is not meet to take the children's bread and to cast it to dogs. Absolute and ultimate insult. He calls her a dog, right? That comes out of the mouth of God. His words are saying, I have nothing to give you. I have no desire to help you. You are not a member of my group. There is no benefit in me helping you. And she said, truth, Lord, yet the dogs eat the crumbs from their master's table. And I'm telling you, when I was reading this, I was thinking to myself, if ever there was anybody in the Bible who deserved help from God, it was this woman. 3 times he insults her. 3 times his words and his actions say, I will not help you. 3 times he says to her, my power is not for you. And she persists. And finally, he turns and he looks at her. Now the mask comes off. Now the facade disappears. And the true face of God is seen. His words disappear. And what is in his heart, what he really wants to do, the way he really uses his power, comes to the fore. And I can see the warmth in his eyes. I can see him smiling. I can see him bubbling with love and affection and admiration for this woman who has forced the hand of God. And he says, oh woman, great is thy faith. He's happy. Be it unto thee, even as thou wilt. This is his will. His word said something else, but this is his will. This is what he wants to do with his power. He wants to use his power. Whether you are a member of his group, whether you are a member of his political party, quote unquote, whether you are for him or against him, he wants to use his power for you. Not for himself, not for his own benefit, but for you. And this woman forces him to supersede his word and show his true heart. And that is how God uses power.
Amen.
We can see the same thing. Amen. We can see the same thing in Luke chapter 9, verse 55. You know, Jesus and his disciples are passing through a particular town. I think it was, I don't remember if it was the Samaritans, but it says they did not receive him. I'll read it. Luke chapter 9, verses 53 to 56. It says, and they did not receive him because his face was as though he would go to Jerusalem. So these people, Jesus is passing through and they do not treat him well. They do not receive him. When his disciples, James and John, saw this, they said, Lord, wilt thou that we command fire to come down from heaven and consume them, even as Elias did? Now, Jesus has the power to call fire down from heaven. He has that power, right? The leaders of the world, you rebel against them. You are not for them. This is how they would reason. They get rid of you. They remove you out of the way. This is what an angel given power would do. You are not for me, I remove you out of the way. But Jesus, God, turned and rebuked them and said, ye know not what manner of spirit you are of. That is the spirit of men who have power. That is the spirit of fallen beings who have power. That is not the spirit of God. For the Son of Man, and listen to this, because I see this as a direct contrast to what Peter says. Peter says, the devil walks around like a roaring lion, seeking who he may devour. That is what he does with his power. But look what the Son of Man does with his. It says, for the Son of Man is not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them. That is what God does with his power. He uses it for his children. Not for himself, not for his own glory, not for his own self-acclamation, but for his children. And we can see this theme right through the life of Jesus. I'm wrapping up now. I just want to look at one more passage Matthew chapter 26, and I'm going to read from verse 51 to 53. Now, to me, this is one of the greatest revelations of how God uses his power, right? Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he is about to be faced with the greatest tribulation of his life, right? He has prayed all night by himself, and now the thieves and vagabonds and the enemy comes upon him to grab him, right? His very existence is threatened. Now, if I have power, if there is ever a time to use it, it is when I am in danger. That is what I would think. It is to protect myself and to preserve my own life. I have the power and I'm in danger. Logics and common sense and human reasoning and thinking tells me that is the time to use my power. But look what happens. Look at what Jesus, the express image of God, does. Look at how he uses his power. It says, and behold, one of them with Jesus. That this is when they come and they are about to arrest Jesus now. One of them which were with Jesus. We understand that that's Peter. He stretched out his hand and drew his sword and struck a servant of the high priests and smote off his ear. Peter is using the power that he has in the way that any logically thinking human being would use their power. He's trying to protect himself and his master, right? They didn't go to attack these people. These people came to attack them. So it would seem that Peter is well within his rights to defend himself. He's using the power that he has in a rational, logical way. That is what I would think. But look at what Jesus says. And I tell you, when I look at the kind of person that God is, that his son is, it boggles the mind. It boggles the mind. Look at what Jesus said. Then Jesus said unto him, put up again thy sword into his place, for all they that take the sword shall perish with the sword. The next verse is even more amazing. Thinkest thou that I cannot now pray to my Father, and he shall presently give me more than 12 legions of angels? Now, I understand that in the days of Jesus, one legion consisted of about 6,000 soldiers, right? Jesus is saying 12 legions would be about 72,000. Jesus is saying, I have the power to empty heaven, right? He was the commander of the armies of heaven before he came to earth. One word from him, and every angel would happily and eagerly rush to his aid to rescue him from these vagabonds. He had that power. One word. In fact, it wouldn't have taken 12 legions of angels, right? One angel would have been all it would have taken. Jesus had the power to summon this help from heaven. It would have been reasonable. They had come to destroy him and to tear him to pieces. But you know what? If Jesus had used the power that he had in that moment, all of his children would have been lost. All of us would have been lost. And so he chose to suppress that power, to turn away from that power for the betterment of his creation, for the good of his children. Now you tell me, which being in this universe would find himself in danger, would find his very life threatened? You have power unspeakable and immeasurable at your disposal, but because you are more concerned about somebody else, you choose to allow yourself to be destroyed so that that person can be safe. That is beyond comprehension. It is beyond understanding. It is something that no ruler on earth who has ever had power would ever do. And this is how God uses his power, not for himself, not for his own benefit, not to help himself, for his children. And if the well-being of his children requires that he gets rid of all of his power and not touch it or use it, that is what he would do. And he would do it again and again and again. That's an amazing thought. So, Revelation chapter 4, verse 11 summarizes it all. In heaven, Jesus is being worshipped. And the words that are spoken are very telling. Revelation chapter 4, verse 11, it says, "Thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power." What does the word worthy mean? When somebody is worthy of something, it means that they qualify for something. They deserve something. They can be entrusted with something. History has shown us no man can be trusted with power. No human being can be trusted with power. At every step of the way, he will abuse it. He will use it for his own benefit, to his own advantage, for his crew. History has shown us that if an angel receives power, he will do the same thing. But you know what? There is one person who is worthy. There's one person who qualifies. There's one person who deserves to receive that power. And what qualifies him? It is who he is. Because he is the only one who has proven that no matter how much power he has, he will never abuse it. He will always use it for the good and the well-being of the universe. And I rejoice this morning that that is the person, that is the kind of person who will rule over us for the rest of eternity. That is the kind of person. I'm glad it's not Trump. I'm glad it's not Biden. I'm glad it's not an angel. That is the person. I can trust somebody like that. I can give my life to somebody like that. Somebody like that can instruct me to jump off a cliff, and I happily do it because I know his intentions. I know his heart. I know that no matter what, he is good. I'm happy that that's the person who is going to be in charge of the universe. And so it is declared at the end, "Thou art worthy," and I'm going to put a word there that is not there. "Thou only art worthy." Nobody else in the universe qualifies. Nobody else in the universe can be trusted with that responsibility, but he can, because he will always use that power for our good and for the good of the universe. And that is why no more will rebellion break out in the universe. No more will anything go wrong, because every creature, you know what? Let me show you another verse in Revelation here. Revelation chapter 5, I'm going to read from verse 11 to 13. "And I beheld and I heard the voice of many angels round about the throne, and the beasts and the elders. And the number of them was 10,000 times 10,000, and thousands of thousands, saying with a loud voice, Worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive" what? To receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing. One person qualifies for all of these things, because who he is makes him qualified. Verse 13, "And every creature which is in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and such as are in the sea, and all that are in them, heard I saying, blessing and honor and glory and power be unto him that sitteth upon the throne, and unto the only one who is just like him forever and ever. If you search heaven, if you search the earth, if you search in the sea or under the sea or around the sea, you cannot find anybody who is worthy to receive power except this person, because he alone can be trusted. He alone can be trusted. And so, worthy is the Lamb to receive absolute power. I hope that you have understood a little more clearly this morning, and have a grasp of what I was trying to say, right? Sometimes as a speaker, you don't get across exactly the things you wanted to say, and you feel like you probably have left out something. But I hope that the message has come across this morning, and we understand a little better why it is that we are so privileged to have a person like this in our lives. We understand. I was looking into it and I was thinking, man, I'm happy that he's the one who is going to be in charge. I'm happy he's the one, right? You know, there was a prime minister that Jamaica had a few years ago. He's the longest serving prime minister in our history. And while he was in power, he taxed the people to their teeth, right? He taxed the people to their teeth. But at the same time, he passed a law that every prime minister should receive the same salary as they received in office after they resign, after they retire. They should continue to receive the same salary for the rest of their lives. He passed that law, right? So he made sure to set up himself perfectly before he left office. And of course, every prime minister who came in after that, none of them would think about changing that law because it will benefit them also. Men have always manipulated power and usurped power for their own benefit and their own good. And that is why it has always led to disaster, murder, bloodshed, deceit, misery. But one person only can be guaranteed to always act for the good of his children, even at the expense of himself.
Amen.
And only that person deserves and can be trusted to sit on the throne of the universe. And I'm glad that that person this morning is Jesus Christ. I can happily give my life for such a person. So I thank you for listening this morning, and I hope that these thoughts have
Hallelujah.
blessed and helped to
Amen.
encourage you.
Amen. Wonderful. Well
Amen.
done.
Amen.
Well done, brother.
Praise the
All
Lord.
right.
Thank you.
All right.
Um, I'm going to explain something also. Daniel kind of forced me to explain a little bit more because he didn't say enough. He said so much, but not enough. And I think I need to just kind of explain because I did explain last week that something happened where I saw, or it was a week before, where God intervened miraculously. But Daniel said a bit more about it, and so I feel that I need to say a little bit more to kind of be very transparent. It's a little challenging because there is over 100 people in the room, and I don't know everybody. And when you don't know everybody, it's a little hard to be very open. I'm pretty open when I'm among my brethren, but sometimes some parts of my life I want to keep a little bit reserved. But anyway, let me go ahead and open up a bit more. Sometimes, as all of you know, from the for the past more than 30 years, I have been fully involved in the work of the ministry, and the Lord has taken care of me, of the ministry, of those who are involved, my family, Brother Howard's family, and whoever else was involved, very well. Some time ago, I was in a discussion on Facebook, and there was a guy who was an atheist who was involved, and he became very insultive. He began, because we did not agree. I find that atheists tend to be very rude and insulting. So he became very insulting, and he said that, all I do is I just take people's money and I do nothing, because he sees me as a minister, and he says that this is what we do. We just collect money and do nothing. And to be honest, it put a little seed in my mind, and I thought, I got an idea of why Paul says that, he was a tent maker. He made tents, and he would not receive any donations. And a little seed was in my mind that I wish there was some way I could live that way, so that I can, what I do in the work is absolutely free from any human input. Now, this is me personally, right? Because I know everybody will say, and I will agree, that the workman is worthy of his hire. I know you will agree, and I think so too, but I just have a thing about me personally, maybe like Paul did, that I began to wish that there was some way. Then something happened, which is that up to a certain point, the financial needs of myself and Brother Howard, it was provided by the ministry. Whatever donations we got, our needs were taken care of. We were able to travel around. We were able to take care of our expenses, our plane fare. We never had to ask anybody for money for all our traveling expenses, because this was taken care of. Everything was, God took care of everything. But after a while, the financial restrictions began to get tighter and tighter. The bank began to ask, is your ministry registered? And there began to be pressure from the government that everything needs to be under the government's registration. So anybody who is collecting money, anybody who is receiving money, the institution has to be registered. So eventually, because we had to work with a bank, we had to get registered. But we registered as a non-profit organization, because we had to do that or become a business. And to be non-profit, one of the things about a non-profit organization is that nobody who is involved in the organization is able to receive any money from what comes into the ministry. And most people donate to the ministry. They send to the Open Face Fellowship or Restoration Ministries. It would come to the ministry. So from this point on, the only way that I could have an income, or Howard or whoever else is involved in the ministry, is if somebody sends a check specifically to me personally or to Howard personally. So the Lord still continued to provide, but you will understand that it became a little bit more challenging. And at one point, people used to donate by PayPal, because I have a personal PayPal account. And PayPal froze the account for 3 months, because they realized that people were sending donations, and they froze the account, and they refused to give me access to any of the money. And they said the only way this could be, I had to have a business account. If I open a business account, everything that goes into the business has to be connected to the ministry account, and everything will go straight into the ministry. And as you know, as I said, we wouldn't be able to receive anything from that account. So when they unfroze the account, eventually I started trying to set up a business account, which is very complicated. When they unfroze the account, I just stopped, and I just told everybody, don't send money to PayPal anymore. If you do, it has to be very careful. You have to say, for family and friends. But I kind of discourage people from trying to send that way, because if a lot of money comes through PayPal, then PayPal is going to freeze the account again. So anyway, that was the situation. So and since I'm opening up myself to everybody, I might as well tell you, I know that the Lord is coming soon. All of us believe this. If he doesn't come right away, maybe one day I might die. And if I do, I know that my wife will be left alone in the world. Because we don't have I don't have a pension to get, because I left teaching more than 30 years ago. I just spent a few years in teaching. I don't have a pension to get. I don't have an insurance scheme. I know that if anything happens, there's no backup. So anyway, these thoughts went through my mind, and I began to think, if I can do some kind of investment, if I can find a way to do some investment, I would like to do that. So this may be my thought, but I prayed about it a lot. Okay. And so eventually I decided to do a little investment. So I just say this to you. So far, this investment is not very successful. It's just about balancing out. But the point is, I'm trying to explain what happened with that story that Daniel told you, because I feel that I really need to explain a little bit more. So I did something unwise, and everything went the wrong way. To me, it's like when you're in a business. If you do something unwise, then you can get hurt. And I don't know anything about this world, because all my life, for the past, before I became a Christian, I was not a business person. I just worked as a teacher. After I became a Christian, for all my life, the only thing I'm interested in is the message of the work, and I had no other concern. Right now, at this moment, I don't know if my concerns are good or bad. I pray to the Lord a lot about it. I don't want to be concerned about something like this, but sometimes I think I I should be thoughtful. It doesn't mean that I lack faith if I ask the Lord to show me a way. That's how I think about it. So anyway, so as Daniel told you, things went the wrong way, and I was just thinking, well, I did something foolish, and I need to learn my lesson. And when he said, "Why don't you pray?" I said, "Well, I don't think I should pray about this. I think I did foolishly, and I don't expect God to change the whole world just for me." But he said, "He's your father." He reminded me, he's your father. Why wouldn't he care? Why wouldn't he do it? So I prayed. I said, "Lord, I don't know what you will do. I'm not asking you to do anything, but if you can do this for me, I would appreciate it. I don't even know if I have the right to ask, but I would appreciate it." And that is what happened. The thing that amazes me so much is that I needed everything to change just a certain amount to bring me right back to where I was coming from. And everything turned and went back to exactly that point, and then reversed exactly
Amen.
the very dollar. So I mean, it was to me an amazing, emotional, heart-moving illustration of how God cares about everything, and how he listens to the prayers of his children. It's not a question of whether I was right or wrong, or I deserved or didn't deserve. It was just that as my father, and more than the money and more than anything, was the realization that I have a father. I have a father.